Hello everyone, and welcome to part 3 of our lovely little Mooney flight. Kind of going in depth with my experiences with the plane as well as kind of really flying it. Today's video, of course, we're going to be heading down to the traffic pattern and putting this thing on the ground, as well as dealing with the rest of our handy dandy descent. Let's get started. So as I was mentioning in the previous video, getting this thing down is a bit of a process. The reason it's so challenging is because it's just so aerodynamically clean that when we try to encourage it to descend, you tend to pick up a lot of speed. I think the fastest I've ever been in an airplane I operated was in a Mooney, because I basically started descending at one point. And before I knew it, my GPS indicated 222, I think it was, 221, something like that. I have a picture of it on my phone. And that was pretty quick. Obviously, we had a tailwind helping us out there. But just giving you an idea of how much energy we have to now get rid of for the purposes of our actual flight is just staggering. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to play with the nose of the plane here until I can get myself right at the bottom of the yellow line. And I'm taking a look now, and I can see we're sitting there right there. That's basically going to be our limit of descent. So as I descend, every minute, I'm going to pull the throttle back by about 1 inch of mercury. Now, the reason I'm doing this, of course, is to discourage the plane from building power as the air starts to get thicker. So there's our absolute limit there. Let's see, we're doing about 170 indicated. Yeah, we're over 200 right now. Wow, we're moving. And one of the things you'll observe here is the best speed I'm getting right now is about 600 feet per minute, but even though I'm doing 170. So when it comes to descents in this plane, you have to descend relatively early, or you have to use the speed brakes to kind of help you out. The speed brakes, of course, as we showed you last time, are a great tool to help kind of slow you down and allow you to take a much steeper angle. In my opinion, the speed brakes are overmodeled in this game versus what they are in the real plane. The real plane, it makes the plane rumble, and you slow down a little bit, but it's not like game over slow down like this plane. It's honestly, these things are like, the speed brakes on an F-16. They're incredible. So you'll notice one thing I'm doing as I'm descending here is I'm constantly making little tiny tweaks to my throttle to try to keep my power. The next thing I'm doing is you can kind of see my fuel flow suddenly changing is I'm adjusting the mixture there to kind of keep that in. And what I'm doing is basically keeping the power up during my entire descent. Now, directly off my nose right now, you'll probably see Poughkeepsie Airfield. It's basically right there. Everybody says it's that white block. It's not. It's actually the thing that precedes it. You can see right there. We're going to be landing, of course, to the northwest here. Runway 6 is going to be our descent point. Now, this plane, as it stands right now, is going too fast to be able to pull off any of these maneuvers. As a matter of fact, I'm dipping into the yellow at the moment, and I still have, as you can see, 5,500 feet to get rid of. This plane is staggering. I think we used something like 10 miles per 1,000 feet or something. I forget exactly what the ratio is. It's quite staggering. The best way to do it, of course, is you do have a GPS. You can just measure whatever altitude you are divided by 500, and that's how many minutes you need to descend. Now, my destination is about 3.25 minutes away. Doing the math on that real quickly in the back of my head, let's see here. That's pretty fast. That's 1,100 feet per minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some assistance here. Speed brakes. Now, this plane, when they simulated this plane, they overdid it. They really made the speed brakes way too good. They're just like I mentioned a second ago. You can't speed brake that hard in this plane. It just goes ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, and that's it. And it makes a lot of noise, by the way. It's one of those funny things. You do get a speed reduction, but that's not the equivalent of 2,000 feet per minute. But we're taking advantage of the speed brakes to help get us down. One of the fun things about the speed brakes in this plane is you slow down, the noise that the speed brakes make significantly decreases. Now, one of the things I learned the hard way is the speed brake button on the one that I would fly is actually right here. So when you push the throttle in, you hit the speed brake button by accident, you wouldn't even know the speed brakes were deployed because you can't hear them until you start getting really, 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 really fast. It's just kind of one of those little kind of quirks of the plane, so to speak. One of the things I'm observing here is as I've engaged the speed brakes, we're actually going to be pretty much, we're going to land short. If I put the speed brakes back on and let myself pick up speed, I'll actually be much more able to kind of hit the point that I need to hit because we've erased so much altitude so much quickly. So go ahead and pop the speed brakes back in. One thing we forgot to do is we forgot to adjust the manifold pressure. Again, I never descend like this in the real world. I give myself a lot more time. I would have started descending before the mountain range behind us, basically. And you can see here we go right up to 170 knots effortlessly. Isn't that a pain in the butt? Like, now my descent rate, of course, is going to decrease. And now we're doing 180 and about to enter traffic pattern with Cessna 152s. See how hard that is? And that's one of the things that when I was first learning to fly this plane, all of my time and effort and basically in training, it was learning basically how, first of all, to land this thing. It's kind of a pain in the butt, as you'll see, but also how to manage the incredible aerodynamic capabilities of the plane itself. And that's just one of those things that you always got to kind of be ready for it. Again, I can pop the speed brakes out again, and now we're almost perfect. We're just a little fast. We're a little fast. So what we're going to do, of course, is we're going to cross the field right about the midpoint, and then we're going to put ourselves in a left downwind for 6. That should get us down pretty smoothly. And you can see our speed right now. We could actually put the landing gear down. One of the things the manual actually will tell you to do is to drop the gear, assuming you've got good speed if you need even more drag with this plane, because you can actually have the landing gear down at pretty high speed. It's the doors that you have to worry about. Those are the ones you can't exceed the speed on. It's just kind of one of those neat little quirks. And again, you can see speed brake's still out. I've got to actually reduce power just a tiny bit again, and I've kept it basically consistent. My mixture's set nice and easy here. This is a pretty decent speed. Ideally, 100 knots is a pretty good pattern speed for most planes, but we're doing about $1.25, which is still pretty darn fast. But it just gives you an idea of the staggering capability of this airplane. Now, this is the mistake everybody makes. So they'd say cross midfield, left downwind for 6. It's like, all right, we'll do that. So we're getting to our 1,200 feet, which is going to be our traffic pattern altitude here. And it's about 1,200. I'm going to pull the nose up. Don't bring in the speed brakes. Just hold the nose. And what's going to happen is as the plane starts to bleed off speed here, you can see we're still at the correct power setting, is we're going to have the ability to pull this plane all the way into its flap and gear speed. And what's going to happen is with my speed brakes still out, I'm going to go ahead and engage the landing gear. I'm going to put my first click of flaps in, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring in the speed brakes. We're doing all that together in one big motion. We're basically trading one kind of drag for another kind of a thing like that. And once that's been executed, of course, and now we can actually land the plane. So landing the Mooney is pretty easy. 70 knots is the magic speed to approach it. If you get a little slow, the nose gets a really, really weird. It gets like, your nose will be like pointing at the sky at 65. It's crazy. But of course, what we can do is we're getting all established as we can finally start to reduce the power a little bit. The best speed, of course, is 15 inches is like the absolute minimum for this plane in the pattern. That will get you pretty good. But remember, that plane is going to get really sinky on you once it starts to get kind of past that sweet spot on the critical point there. So again, I've got one click of flaps in to kind of help me out in the pattern there. I've got myself all established. I'm pull that nose up. And we're just going to get ourselves nice and square of the runway. Looks good. I'm going to go ahead and dump the rest of the flaps. That's right, all of the flaps. And we're going to start guiding our plane downward. Now notice this plane does not want to slow down. One thing the manual talks about is, of course, using the speed brakes for the purposes of helping you slow down in descents like this. Not recommended. That's actually very dangerous because you're very, very likely to forget them, or you're likely to unbalance and get everything unstable. This plane demands a very, very, very precise approach. By the way, don't forget your cowl flaps if you've forgotten them already. One thing I appreciate, it's very easy to see, so I can just kind of turn my head like this and just look out my windows and get myself set up. That looks pretty good to me. Looks pretty good. Now we're going to do our Gumpels checks. So I'm going to look down on the floor. You're going to see the gears extended, which they are. We check the ram air on the plane that I fly, and then we go ahead and execute our last turn here. Notice this plane does not want to slow down. Looks good. I got ourselves a little bit of a slip. This plane slips beautifully, by the way. You can fly this thing sideways. Looking pretty good. Speed's a little high, so go ahead and throw that throttle back there. Get ourselves nice and lined up. Oh, man, I really, really want to push the speed brake button right now. Man, I love to push the speed brake button. If I just tap that speed brake button, I could bleed off those last couple knots of speed. I guess I'll push the speed brake button. Let's go ahead and engage that. Oh, boy. Too much. Too much. Go around. Go around. So when we go around with this plane, what we want to do, of course, is slam in the speed brakes. Do not touch the landing gear until you have a positive rate of climb. So what I'm going to do is wait until we have a positive rate of climb. Gear come up last. All right, flaps are smoothly coming up. I've run out of runway. I'm going to go ahead and retract the landing gear and kind of maintain that steady speed. Notice, by the way, the amount of right foot. So that is one of the big fun things you have to get used to with this plane. It has no drag, and you really, really, really have to keep that in mind when you're approaching to land with it, because you're going to find yourself so fast. Remember all that energy we had on that descent? That's what makes this plane hard to fly. It's not so much that it isn't a good plane, it's that you have to cope with the performance of the plane, and that's one of the things that kind of shocks people when they first move to it. I know that I was very confused by it. You know, it's even more staggering when you switch from this plane off to another plane that's lesser performance, and it melts your brain that you pull the throttle back and it stops flying. All right, we're just going to go ahead and execute our little downwind leg here. We're going to be a little more careful this time. All right, it's 1,200 feet. Just pull the throttle in half. That's all you have to do. Notice, by the way, I'm already too fast for the basically everything on the plane. I can't even put my landing gear down. Actually, I can't put my landing gear down, but but I can't put my flaps down yet. And that's just, again, to give you an idea of just the ridiculous level of performance this plane has. So I'll go ahead and pull that nose up. Again, we can do 1,200 feet, and I'll take advantage of the nose coming up to go ahead and reduce that last bit of energy. And I can go ahead, now that I'm in the white arc, I can get those flaps in. So what we're going to do differently this time, and again, this is this plane, like I said, it's just different. It's just different. We're trying to keep the power up, but we're also trying to slow down at the same time. So what I actually do that works really, really well for this plane is I'm coming down here, like I said, at about 90. What you can do is you can put the last bit of flaps down before you actually start your kind of last bit of descent there. And that really makes this plane much, much, much simpler to control the speed of. All right, we're beaming the numbers there. I go ahead and drop those notch flaps. We're just going to point the nose down, get to about our speed. About 500 feet per minute is all you need. Notice I'm well below the recommended RPM here. We should be a little bit faster, and our manifold pressure should be a bit higher. 90 is a good speed for this plane for a lot of different reasons, because it's going to give us enough margin. But again, it's going to be very fun to try to bleed that speed off. We're looking for the 3/4 point, which is right there. Looks good to me. Big reduction in power. Do not skid the plane like I just did. That's very sloppy. Notice, even at 500 feet per minute, I'm still having no issue getting rid of all this energy here. All right, just line ourselves up. And we're going to go right base to final here, which makes it nice and easy. We're going to have a nice sweeping left turn, which we have plenty of time to get that last little bit of speed out of this plane. And again, that's what I found so fascinating about learning to fly it. Do not skid. All right, idiot checks. Looks good. Gas undercarriage. That's actually good enough to go around. I could actually go around a second time. You can see here that my speed is still very high. All right, let's start landing. Now, what you'll observe here, now that we've got this thing at a correct speed, is how high my nose is. We're doing 75 knots. We're actually correct here, and I can barely see out the nose of this plane. That is incorrect. The real plane does not have that limitation. Notice I can cut the throttle now, and I can bring it all the way down to the ground. So here's what you do. You put your nose over the ground, and you deploy your speed brakes. The brakes in this plane are fantastic, by the way, and when you use them, don't lock them up. I've done that enough times to get a very angry flight instructor at me. So as you can see, this plane is a bundle of joy. And like I said, I love this plane to death, but it is so quirky. Everything about it just does not want to slow down. And the real plane, by the way, has really good flaps. Like, you're not going to have that issue that I just had back there. It would slow down right away on you. You'd never have to touch the speed brakes. But you can see just how much effort this plane takes to just get it to the speed that you need to safely operate it. And that, to me, is kind of the crux of this plane. Now, for those of you who are big Bonanza fans, it's a bigger plane. So when you cut the throttle, it doesn't, you slow down right away. But in this plane, when you cut that throttle, it's just pure aerodynamics. So when we're finally done flying this plane, of course, and we're like, oh, that was a fun day. Let's go ahead and get ourselves all established over here. Kind of do one of these little things, kind of find a parking spot, kind of walk back to Poughkeepsie. Go ahead and kick my nose over and hold the brake at the same time. We're going to call that good. Shutting this plane down is a snap. We're just going to shut this one off. We're going to go ahead and give it power. And all we're going to do is we're going to pull this out slowly. It's going to say that was a fun flight, and I'm going to say, yeah, it was. Wait until the thing stops turning. Usually it's a little bit quicker. Then all we have to do is disengage the key, click the button, and enjoy.